shine like a diamond down in the mine. And the choice is yours if you're willing to choose.
So I've been listening to Hadestown on loop recently, as one does, and this line Hades sings to Eurydice stands out to me in particular. The use of the word choice in this context is unusual. The choice is yours, says the god of the underworld to the girl who is about to die. Except in Hadestown, Eurydice isn't dying. Regardless of what external factors might have pushed her towards this decision, she does ultimately follow Hades of her own volition, and Orpheus follows her of his own volition. Orpheus's journey in Hadestown is a masterclass in visual and auditory storytelling. Of course, I say this as a STEM major who's worked production on one musical in my first year of college, which was like 4 months ago, so it was a Zoom musical. So in summation, take my opinions here with a tablespoon of salt, but I adore the difference between the journey into Hadestown and the journey out. Orpheus's outcomes throughout the musical, and especially on the railway track, are so inextricably tied to how he sees the world, a direct result of his perceptions. His lived experiences are in his own hands. The act of choosing, then, in terms of both perceptions and actions, becomes all important in deciding his future, and by extrapolation, our futures. Before I can get into analyzing Hadestown as its own musical, though, I think it's important to consider it as an adaptation of the original myth, particularly in terms of how it differentiates itself from its source material. Specifically, I want to talk about the setting. While Hermes describes it somewhat dramatically as a world of gods and men, the backdrop of Hadestown is much more mundane than that. It's a human settlement stuck in the rut of an economic depression, with the underworld reimagined as a mining town. Dismal, for sure, but ultimately very human. The gods have no significant difference from the men beyond a power imbalance reflective of an entirely human social hierarchy. Even the fates don't actually influence the events of the story directly. Sure, they might follow the characters around and torment them with endless running commentary, but people can do that just as easily. There are no red strings for these fates to pull. They can't force the characters to do anything. These people don't have destinies. This notion of choice, that we and not the fates control our own lives, lays the groundwork for the show's central themes of hope and agency, and it underpins Orpheus's narrative arc. Orpheus begins the show with the firm conviction that the world is good. This is his defining trait, that he sees the way the world could be in spite of the way that it is. This comes through most clearly, I think, in Wedding Song. When Eurydice looks at the world, she sees a dark, dismal place where nothing and no one can be trusted.
People turn on you just like the wind. Everybody is a fair weather friend.
But Orpheus believes that their world is a benevolent one. He promises her that when he sings to them, when he asks them to, the birds will lay feathers down for their bed, the trees will give them fruits for their table.
When I sing my song, all the rivers will sing along. They're gonna break their backs for us, but they're gonna be generous. All a flash and then our pen, all to fashion for your hand.
Orpheus believes that the natural world will align itself with his goals if he asks it to, and he sees this goodness in people as well. Throughout the musical, Orpheus returns to his epic, the song he's writing about Hades. Now, Hades is responsible for most of the suffering in Orpheus's world, yet when he sings about Hades, Orpheus sings about the love Hades has for Persephone, and the anguish he feels when Persephone is gone.
After half of the year with Persephone gone, in the dark of the mind he is trying to fill the hole that his lover has left in his arms.
Through his music, Orpheus seeks to understand Hades and attributes his actions to external factors where other characters reference only innate personality traits. If you're a fan of Hadestown, you've probably spent a normal amount of time poring over the original and final recordings and picking apart all the differences. You might know then that in the original recording of Way Down Hadestown, Orpheus sings, amongst other angry, derisive comments, that Hades is a mean old boss. That would be an internal attribution to his behavior. He's just a shitty guy. But in the final Broadway recording, Mitchell gives this line and all the other ones like it to Hermes, leaving Orpheus as the sole character in the musical who still sees goodness and humanity in Hades, aside from Persephone, of course. This was a deliberate character choice, and one that transforms Orpheus from the angry young man archetype into someone who refuses to see the darkness in his world, as long as there exists the potential for light. These preconceived notions shape Orpheus's relationship with the railway track. Orpheus believes that the world is good. He believes that he can trust the entities within it, and his beliefs are validated. As Orpheus descends into the underground, he expects its natural component to sing along with him, and they do, the very walls parting for him, the rocks and stones echoing his song. The soundscape, set design, and choreography here all serve to complement and validate Orpheus's convictions, his staunch optimism in the face of everyone else's hopelessness. Throughout Wait For Me, Hermes sings of the dangers of the road.
And don't look no one in the eye. That town is on a something dry. Just something brain, just something breath. Don't cook the heart right out your chest.
The stage is dark as Hermes sings of these dangers, low blue lights accenting the mist on the floor, creating a gloomy, ominous atmosphere. The spotlight on Orpheus casts the workers around him in shadow, painting them as lurking threats, just as Hermes describes. But then, as soon as Orpheus takes over the song, the stage transforms. The workers turn their lamps on, and suddenly the stage fills up with warm orange light that cuts through the darkness. The stage reflects what Hermes and Orpheus are singing about. Their outlooks literally shape the world as it appears to them. When Orpheus sings "I'm coming," he's echoed by a full chorus, granting strength to his words and his convictions. The mist and darkness remain, signifying the dangers of Orpheus's journey, and his journey is a dangerous one. But as long as Orpheus sings, trusting the world to sing with him, that warm orange glow lights up the stage, and the workers answer his call, validating his trust. The fates ask him why he is all alone, and Orpheus is not lying when he answers, "I am not alone." I mean, just listen to the strength of this chorus. Orpheus's belief in human goodness is also what allows him to leave Hadestown with Eurydice. It's by appealing to Hades' goodness and love, traits that the other characters ignore or dismiss in him, that Orpheus convinces him to let Eurydice go. Orpheus's optimism and willingness to trust are what allow him to attain success in his dark, grim world. The journey out of Hadestown looks different. At this point in the story, Orpheus has learned that Eurydice abandoned him willingly. He was beaten down by the workers even after they helped him in Wait For Me, and even now, even after mobilizing the workers to his cause and melting Hades' heart, he's still forced to walk ahead, alone, trusting both Hades and Eurydice to keep to their word. The Orpheus of Act 1 would have trusted Hades to let Eurydice go, and Eurydice to follow. Now though, his trust is shattered. He's had a really bad day, and optimism is a difficult choice. It's an active choice. It's something you have to decide to be from moment to moment. And Orpheus at this point is losing the will to make that choice. He's hurt and tired, and he's finally experienced the world the way everyone else seems to see it. It's not so easy to come back from that. Echoes the fates, asking himself why he's alone. The road he's on is the same, but now he's unable to draw strength from the natural elements he relied on before. The soundscape here is integral to the profound aloneness Orpheus feels following his loss of trust. Whenever Orpheus sings his love motif, he is always accompanied by the chorus. Yet now when he sings and waits, the stage is deathly silent, and you can just feel the last of his faith shriveling away. Ironically, while he really was alone the first time he made the journey, this time Orpheus is followed closely by Eurydice and the workers, and they sing to him constantly. But he can't hear them. His trust broken, he now expects the world to betray him. So that is what he perceives, his lover's words of encouragement blocked out by his own insecurity and the oppressive darkness of the stage. With the story placed in a real-world setting, Orpheus's perception of the road as isolating is not supernatural. It's the product of his own expectations. This loss of trust and its effects on his perceptions lead to the choice that make the story what it is. Hadestown is a tragedy. It's also the most hopeful musical I know, because the story doesn't end when Orpheus looks back. This story isn't really about Orpheus and Eurydice, or at least it's not just about them. Because at the end of everything, Orpheus wins against Hades, wins against the system, and that outcome too is entirely the product of Orpheus's own choices. When Orpheus chooses to follow Eurydice, when he chooses to stay and argue with Hades even after being beaten down, when he chooses to see the goodness and love in Hades after everything Hades has done, those choices are what bring the system down. Orpheus loses Eurydice, but he also brings back spring. He convinces Hades to let Persephone go. That is why, after the curtain falls, Persephone and the workers return to sing their toast to Orpheus, who sings in the dead of night, even though he lost his love. Because through his choices, Orpheus inspired them all to believe in a brighter world too, inspired them to stand up to Hades just as Orpheus did. Hadestown is fundamentally about the act of choosing. It is about the fact that we have the ability to make choices, and the inherent, inalienable hope that arises from that fact. After Orpheus loses Eurydice, the workers gather in their opening positions, ready to begin again. As Hermes declares, to know how it ends and sing it anyway is a mark of strength. So they will sing it again and again, as many times as they need to, in the hopes that someday it will turn out right. As long as we can see the way the world could be, we have a chance to try and make it so. So even when you're crushed by the world, you can always make the choice to try again, knowing you might fail, but knowing also that one day, maybe, the story reaches a happy ending. One day, maybe, our choices and our hope become the things that bring back spring.